Hi, I'm Vicki Guile, a teacher in Garden City. I'm here to give a brief presentation about the main elements of FERPA. This presentation is specifically aimed at informing elementary teachers in public schools about confidentiality concerning student education records. Let's begin by looking at what FERPA is. FERPA stands for the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and it is simply a federal law that applies to public schools receiving federal funding. This federal funding is contingent upon the compliance of each school to follow the FERPA guidelines. The purpose of this law guarantees parents of elementary students certain rights pertaining to the confidentiality of their child's students' educational records, and we will discuss what these rights are in just a moment. Because these records are confidential, public schools will develop policies and procedures regarding the types and location of student educational records. They should also have policies in place regarding the maintenance of these records. Okay, what educational records are protected by FERPA? All files, documents, and other materials which contain information directly related to a student and make that student personally identifiable are considered confidential. These records are maintained by the Educational Institute. Keep in mind that you as a teacher, along with the principal and counselor, all have a legitimate interest in accessing this information in order to provide and improve educational opportunities for the students. So you do have a legitimate reason to access these records. These records may include, but are not limited to, student transcripts, grade reports, social security numbers, special education records, student assistance reports, and student identification numbers. So, what are the specific parental rights that were mentioned? Before we discuss these, we need to go ahead and keep in mind that parental rights are extended not only to the custodial parent, but to the non-custodial parent as well. This may even be true for legal guardians should students have legal guardians. Okay, the first right is that the parents have the right to inspect their child's educational records. Because these records are confidential, a policy needs to be in place in the school on how to do this process. A school official, possibly the teacher himself, needs to be available when the parent is looking at these files for the purpose of answering questions or interpreting information that is contained in the files. Okay, what happens if a parent believes that the records are inaccurate, inappropriate, or misleading? They then have the right to challenge and seek amendment to their child's educational records if they believe this is true. How would this be done? The school would set up a meeting between the parents and appropriate school personnel to look at the information and decide if the information needs to be amended or corrected in the folders. Hopefully, an agreement could be reached and satisfaction could be felt by both parties. If there is no satisfaction or no agreement, the parents have the right to take this to the district's director of student records. And hopefully an agreement would be reached at that level. Parents also have the right to file a complaint with the district's director of student records if they believed that the confidentiality or privacy of their students' records have been breached. In other words, if the good faith between the teacher, the school, and the parents has been breached, possibly by a teacher communicating this confidential information to another person other than a person that needs to know the information, this would be a time when the parents could file a complaint saying that we were not complying with FERPA. Okay, moving on, the parents then also, because the records are confidential, have to consent to disclosure of their child's educational records. This must be done in writing. And finally, the parents also must be notified of their rights concerning the privacy and confidentiality of the records. The district needs to do this on an annual basis, just to keep the parents informed so they know what they are able to do with their students' records. Okay, there are some records that do not fall under the FERPA guidelines. Those records can include information that is considered directory information. And this directory information includes information such as name, address, telephone number, possibly dates of attendance. This information is typically used and published in a directory that is then handed out to families within the school system. You need to know that parents do have the option to object to the release of this information, and they have the option to sign a waiver to keep this information private. You need to probably check with your school to see how this directory information is handled in your particular school. Other records that do not fall under the FERPA guidelines include records of instructional, supervisory, or administrative personnel which are in the sole possession of the maker. And these records are not revealed to any other person except for possibly a substitute. Like I said, these records do not fall within the FERPA guidelines. Okay, what are your rights? Teachers, counselors, and administrators, as I said before, have access to confidential information if it is for legitimate educational purposes. Now, because this information is confidential, there needs to be a written documentation of who accesses this information, and it should be kept by the institution so that that is a matter of record should problems arise. Okay, you also have the right to maintain personal notes about students that you can use for your own personal use when you are planning educational programs for students, trying to provide them more effective instruction. Okay, in closing, please keep in mind that the primary purpose of educational records is to aid school personnel in developing the best educational program for each student. Therefore, it is very imperative that you and all other faculty and staff have a working knowledge of FERPA guidelines. If you feel like you need more details or more comprehensive information about FERPA, it is available at many different websites. You can also access more information at the website that you see located at the bottom of your screen. Once again, this has been just a very brief, short presentation giving you the main ideas concerning FERPA. Hopefully this has been of some use to you in the fact that you now know how to proceed, or the fact that you know that you need to maybe gather more information to help guide you through the year. Thank you. Hope this has been helpful.